So I want to talk about Channel Awesome, which is something I didn't think I would be saying in 2018, because who gives a shit anymore, right? But I guess I should provide some historical context for people watching this in the future. So it is currently April 2nd, 2018, day after Easter. Happy Easter, by the way, for everyone who did stuff for that or, did stuff with family or whatever. Hope you had a good one. But anyways, April 2nd, 2018, earlier this morning, a bunch of former video producers for Channel Awesome created a Google document that compiles a list of their complaints and negative experiences that they've had with Channel Awesome and its administration. Excuse me. Including Doug Walker, aka the Nostalgia Critic, and a bunch of like other people whose names I forget, but they're like majority shareholders and like CEOs and stuff like that. And in general, people who like there's a list of people who are repeat offenders that show up in all of these complaints and negative experiences that are definitely to blame for what's going wrong. But I should provide some historical context, I guess, because I'm sure there's a lot of people watching this who are younger who probably don't even really know what Channel Awesome is. Maybe you've heard of it. So let's start from the beginning. I think around like 2008, 2009, kind of around the same time as the Angry Video Game Nerd, there's this guy named the Nostalgia Critic who kind of, alongside AVGN, was kind of one of the, like, oh god, I don't know what to say, but like pioneers. I cringe saying that term, but one of the first few people to really do the online personality-based video media review thing. He was on the forefront of that trend and kind of influenced a lot of what we have today in terms of like YouTube reviewers and stuff. So anyways, he ends up partnering up over time with a bunch of other video producers who also make reviews and stuff like that. They formed this like network type thing called That Guy with the Glasses. And then around like 2013, 2014, something like that, they rebranded Channel Awesome, and they have like at that point, they have a shit ton of people working for them. Just to list some names, Todd in the Shadows, and also keep in mind, I think a lot of these people have left. I'm actually not even sure who's still with them, but at this point, I think most people have left. Spoonie was a big one. I'll talk about him a little bit later. Linkara, Cinema Snob, Angry Joe, he's still with them, but you probably wouldn't notice just because he basically just uploads all of his stuff to YouTube, and I don't even think he really talks about them much. But yeah, like they were this really big network thing, kind of on the forefront of the internet personality content creator thing. And they ran a more traditional style website. They got in early enough that honestly, they were before the time that like making a living off of YouTube was a thing, which is a weird time to remember. I still remember it, but I'm sure a lot of people don't. And like they did the more traditional like upload videos and like have ad revenue on the site, or I think they use like Blip TV or other video content services that actually allowed for ads before YouTube even did. And that's how they like paid their creators and got the money and stuff. So I guess if you've been following, and to be frank, I'll explain my personal history with them later, but if you've been following these people for a time, you should have known before this Google Doc got uploaded that there have been problems. I don't even want to say drama, because I feel like that undermines a lot of the experiences that these video producers had, and I don't want to do that because I think that they went through some bad shit. And hey, I'm going to link to that doc down below in the description, and I think it's a fascinating read. And even I will say, if you are interested in creating online content for someone, like being an employee of someone and doing like online video stuff, you should really check this out, because I feel like, not to like scare anyone, but I feel like this is like the worst possible outcome of how stuff like this can go, and like all of the shitty gray areas where people can fuck you over. It is morbidly fascinating. But where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so I guess what I will say is I want to talk a little bit about my personal history with Channel Awesome, because I'm for like the past 5 years now, I haven't really been a fan of the whole personality driven cynical reviewer thing, especially like a lot of them do like the skit based stuff and that's never really been my jam. But hey, on the early days of the internet, in a lot of cases, that was the easiest stuff to find, or it was the most prominent at least. And if you really wanted to find like good content that was like analytical in nature, it could be really hard to dig through. It's a lot easier nowadays. So a lot of the times you're just kind of stuck watching what you had. And also too, this was a point where, you know, social media wasn't that big of a thing. Smartphones were, you know, still kind of coming into being their own thing, and their cameras sucked. Like, not everyone had the means to be a reviewer or like do online video stuff at this point. It was still very closed off, and like only the people that really knew their stuff could do that. And hey, that also explains a lot of these early reviewers are film students who went on to do not much with their film degree. And that explains a lot of the skit-based stuff, which actually, let me get into that real quick, because I've never liked skits in video reviews because they're just dead air to me. Like, they're almost never funny. And hey, okay. Actually, I should preface this by saying, if you like skit-based reviews, I'm not making fun of you. I'm not saying you have bad taste. I'm not, you know, that's not a personal attack on you or anything. That's just me personally saying I don't like them. Had a dude on Twitter come at me one time because I said in one of my things that I said at some point that I didn't like Facecam LPs, and this one dude got really mad at me, like, what the fuck are you doing disrespecting people who like Facecam LPs? And it's like, I never fucking said that. It's just me not liking a thing. That I cannot like a thing, it's fine. But back on topic, I keep getting derailed with this, but hey, that's part of the fun of this, right? Rambling. I've never really liked skits because they just aren't funny to me. They're dead air. I really don't get the appeal of having people come out in poorly made costumes, fight each other with like no cinematography skills whatsoever. It's not funny. And it's so prominent, and I never got why. Like, Angry Video Game Nerd had like a video where like beat the fuck out of Bugs Bunny and like way more stuff like that. And I never really got the appeal or thought it was all that endearing in any way, shape, or form, to the point where when I encounter those in reviews, I skip past them so I can get back to the actual review part. And sometimes it's more difficult to do that than you would think. So that's always been something that I've just never liked. But going back, there were a few months where I will admit I watched The Nostalgia Critic, and I keep in mind, I don't want to like shit talk. I don't want anyone thinking I'm shit talking him or saying that, oh, I never liked him, because, you know, it turns out that he's kind of a piece of shit right now or whatever, and it's cool to do that. I'm actually just giving my personal history. I watched him for like a few months just as he made stuff, and I never really liked his stuff, but I at least could sometimes think they were interesting, or maybe he made a few interesting points. And then he put out a review of Last Action Hero, which is maybe one of the worst reviews I've ever seen made by an online personality. For those of you who don't know, it's a action movie that is basically a parody or satire of like Schwarzenegger action films. And he did not get that at all. And like, he treats it like it's this action movie that lacks all self-awareness, and it's just the worst thing in the world. He actually is just really dumb and did not get that movie was satire, I'm pretty sure. It's baffling how embarrassing that video is. Like, it's actually embarrassing, and I just stopped watching Nostalgia Critic stuff after that because it was so bad. But I did also watch Spoony when he was making stuff. Spoony is known for making JRPG videos and like RPG review type stuff or whatever. But even then, like, I will say, I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy VIII. I think that game's okay. I definitely have problems with it. I don't like his review that everyone like champions as this big takedown of why Final Fantasy VIII sucks or whatever. I think that review kind of poisoned the well on Final Fantasy VIII. Honestly, a lot of his videos actually. A lot of his videos really poisoned the well on discourse around criticism of the games he covered, because it felt like for a solid few years there, anytime you ever referenced any of the Final Fantasies he reviewed, people would just bring up the Spoony review and just parrot talking points from that, and it just got immediately less interesting and not fun to talk about. But the thing that I will always think of nowadays, at least, are his Ultima reviews, which a few of my friends and I like just kind of brought up randomly in conversation like a year or so back, and we just had like this week where we were just laughing our asses off about it, because they start out as like these relatively like normal, and actually I'll even say I think those early Ultima reviews are like fine. They're like decent critique of some older games or whatever. And just as it goes on, like the criticism gets worse not only, but like you can kind of see Spoonie unraveling as a person. And at first you kind of think like, okay, maybe that's the point, because like the series progressively like towards the end starts to get really bad. And you're thinking, oh, maybe that's his funny personality thing where he's going crazy because the games are bad, or whatever. But then like he has this really serious emotional breakdown that he records around like halfway through Ultima 9. And like it's the most pathetic thing I've seen. I actually legitimately believe that while sure he was probably like hamming some of that up for the camera, I think he actually at that point was not okay, because like a year or two later he would go on to do some really stupid, horrendous shit. And like it's just this weird unraveling of a man through like this dumb video review series. It's honestly fascinating to watch. So that's kind of where I stand with Channel Awesome stuff. To be honest, I've seen videos here and there from a lot of the people featured in this Google Doc, and I like them as people. And actually, let me say this. For a lot of these people, or like a lot of the people associated with Channel Awesome, I think they seem like pretty cool people. But I don't necessarily like a lot of their content. And that's fine, you know, you can like someone and just not like the stuff they make. Hey, there's creative differences all around, and you know, what works for some people doesn't work for others. It's fine, whatever. Though I will say though, I'm a big fan of Pushing Up Roses, who was I think she used to, she used to be a Channel Awesome contributor, but I think she left too. So I liked your stuff a lot though. You should go subscribe to her. She makes really good stuff. But yeah, like I feel like this whole Google Doc thing, it kind of felt to me like this weird, I don't want to say final nail in the coffin, but definitely a big nail in the coffin for like the old guard of video criticism. And it's gotten me thinking all throughout the day about kind of tracking what we have now in terms of like online personality and creators, and tracing that all the way back to kind of what I guess you could say was kind of the roots with like AVGN and Nostalgia Critic and stuff like that. Because nowadays, like, you look up, like, you see what's happening, and it feels like every other week you have some big, like, video game influencer dude or whatever, saying something just horrendously out of line and terrible and stupid and, like, really shitty, and them, like, backpedaling super hard and having to make all these, like, apologies that you can tell are half-assed and all this other shit. And I feel like, in a fucked up way, we kind of allowed for a culture where those people rise to the top, because if you think about it, like, we've always championed the content creators who are performatively angry, like they get aggravated because like, haha, getting mad at video games is dumb and fun and stuff like that. And it's honestly like, I think that's led to a lot of the problems we have now, where it seems like I hate to say it, but like a lot of big like content creator people on YouTube are not very good people. I'm just gonna put that out there. And also too, like, to be frank, I think that the whole personality driven, I'm cynical and mad about everything kind of stance that people like, that maybe not even that people take, but kind of that whole like atmosphere kind of influenced a lot of creators that, you know, would come later. I feel like it's led to a lot of really sloppy criticism and really boring analysis. Like, I mean, I complained about the skit thing earlier, but also too, like, you notice this trend with video reviewers where a lot of the times I feel like they don't even make the most sound or valid of critique in favor of putting a joke or two in their video. Like, the one thing that I'm thinking of, just because to get into the mood for recording this, I went through and I watched like a more recent Angry Joe video. He just uploaded one about Sea of Thieves, so I watched that just to kind of get in the headspace for recording this. And he makes this whole like joke about like, oh, you have this like giant multiplayer world, and immediately people just turn to trolling and griefing. And then he has this like longer video clip of him and his friends like trolling this guy, where how Sea of Thieves works, like if you have like a 4-man crew and they get onto the ship of like a one-man crew ship or whatever, they can just keep killing the player over and over again, and then the player respawns back on their boat, but if the other players are still there, they can just keep killing him over and over again. And like that's kind of the whole joke. They're like, oh, haha, look, like it's so easy just to troll people playing solo or whatever. But then he also leaves out that if you go into the main menu, or if you go into the pause menu, there's an option to just blow up your ship, and then you respawn, and that problem completely goes away. Now, to be fair, that's an easy thing to miss, and I'm sure that, it's fair. Maybe he just didn't know that was there. But also, too, there's part of me that can't help but feels like, man, he probably saw that and just wanted to throw a joke into his video. And that's not that's not really what I like. I want good criticism and also jokes. Like, I feel like there's this constant struggle with a lot of people where like you have this fight between inserting personality and that side of it, and also having like actual like content and analysis. And I feel like maybe I'm more interested in creators that allow those things to complement each other than creators that actually on either like allow one to encroach on the other. Though granted, I say it's probably a lot more commonplace in our current YouTube climate, I guess, to get people that go overboard on the personality thing. But you will eventually, like, you do run into some people where there's just no personality and it's all like dry, like content/analysis, like almost academic feeling. And that's for some people, but I kind of feel like I want a little bit of personality, because I feel like that's kind of, that side of expression is why we're all kind of here on the internet at the end of the day, I feel, and I kind of want that heart and soul in the stuff I enjoy too. So finding a balance is tricky, but it's honestly, I feel like that's something even I've struggled with, where I'm still not really sure how much of myself I should be putting out there in a lot of the stuff I make. And hey, it's something I'll hopefully find someday, but I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. But also, too, like, going back to the Sea of Thieves Angry Joe thing or whatever. So, like, yeah, maybe he just made a research mistake and he just made a bad point in his critique. That being said, I saw that and I couldn't help but feel that if some dude who was reviewing that game for IGN made that exact same point or joke in his written review, like, the virgins over at Kotaku in Action would have had a fucking field day with him. Like, it would have been, like, this whole, like, oh, people don't ever do like, I don't know. I'm just getting fed up with the fact that, like, the angry masses of the internet constantly seem to go after the people that want to make, like, actual professional, more developed criticism of games, that, like, take the game seriously and really want to do like a deep dive down into games. Like, those reviewers always seem to get the short end of the stick, not shtick. I don't know why I said like that. Whereas the people who are just haha YouTube funny man, who like turns themselves into cartoon characters and then screams in front of a camera, they always seem to be like, they can say anything and get away with it almost, and that frustrates me to no end. And I feel like there's a weird balancing act there. And you see this time and time again, where there's this idea that, oh, if you make a persona and like that persona is that they're angry and cynical and pissed off all the time, that partially exonerates anything that they say, because you can just say, oh, well, that's not me saying it. That's the fictitious version of myself saying those things. But also too, you can say that about the actual critiques you're like, that is such a like scapegoat for not like backing up your critique that I find like honestly kind of lazy and boring, and I'm just not interested in anymore. Honestly, I've been really happy in recent years with the rise of the video essay and more analytical YouTuber people, because that's honestly where I get most of my like reviews and stuff from nowadays, alongside like, you know, actual game journalists and writers and stuff who I think do really good work, like such as like the people over at Waypoint and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I would much rather like wait a few months and hear what Noah Gervais or Matthew Matosis, Writing on Games, Campster, all those people, I respect them way more in what they have to say, a lot more than like say like an Angry Joe or like Total Biscuit or like, I don't know, like stuff like that. Boogie, I don't like him either. Just because I feel like they're I feel like they're more sincere by not having the whole character element. Well, I mean, Total Biscuit isn't really a character either, but I just don't like his stuff either, honestly. Like, I feel like you don't need the character, and I feel like it's part of what frustrates me, too, is people will go to bat for, like, these fictitious personas and, like, what they have to say about their favorite video games and stuff like that, but also at the same time complain about how, like, oh, my hobby isn't being taken seriously and no one respects my interest. And it's like, yeah, that's because you're championing these like angry dudes who like scream at a camera for 40 minutes as like the peak of content that we have to offer. And that's not the case. I'm sorry. Like, that's not good in my opinion for how other people view us and like, you know, the hobbies and stuff that we have or whatever. But also too, I've been kind of frustrated, and this complaint actually applies a lot to critics I used to like and have kind of fallen out of favor with. Well, like, they've kind of fallen out of my favor, rather. No one knows who I am. I feel like this whole pro-consumer thing has its heart in the right place, but, like, that has become such a catch-all term to describe every, like, angry internet reviewer being mad about video games, to the point where it means nothing anymore, and it really is just a lazy way of saying, I don't like this thing, but I'm pro-consumer, and I'm angry about it, and I don't have to say any more. And I'm not interested in that. I'm way more interested in someone who writes an article about, like, the psychological effects of gambling addiction and how that relates to, like, loot boxes and stuff like that, or, like, how, you know, actual deep dives into like the finances of DLC and day one patches and all of that sort of stuff with actual like meat to it. Like, I don't know, I'm kind of over the whole like dude screaming at me about how upset he is about like big corporations like fuck. And I mean, like, to be fair too, like, I don't want to totally like go against what those people have to say, because hey, DLC can suck and like loot boxes suck and all that, and like I'm right there with them in not liking those things, but I think the ways in which they go about critiquing and complaining about those things does more to discredit actual critique of them than, like, it does more harm than good is what I'm trying to say here, in my opinion. Because like it's really easy to like point at stuff like that and be like, oh, that's just some dude yelling about a thing. It's a lot harder to like fight back against actual numbers and like scientific research and stuff like that that does a lot more of a deeper dive into explaining why those things are bad. Granted, I will say, kind of going against my argument, the people who attack stuff like loot boxes and like, you know, kind of put on the online persona to do that tend to actually get a lot more like, you know, viewers and attention than the people who go through and do the like harder work of why those things are bad. So, I mean, that's kind of going against my argument, I guess. But I think also too, at the end of the day, for, and this doesn't apply to all of them, but it applies to many of them, I'm frankly really tired of hearing complaints about stuff like DLC when those same people are making thousands of dollars off of ad revenue and Patreon and will probably make more money by streaming or recording stuff of that DLC. Like, those are the last people I want to hear complaining about how they're being ripped off and how they're not making, like, how they're how they're being scammed out of their money, because they are making so much money out of those. Like, if they didn't have anything to complain about, they would have to find something else to make money off of, honestly. Like, it's this weird fucked up, like, cycle, and I don't get it. Like it's this weird well-oiled machine that just baffles me. Like, it almost seems like they got a good thing going here, where like the big dumb video game corporations like EA do something fucked up and it makes them a shit ton of money in the long run, and then the online video game like content creator people get really mad about it, and then they get a bunch of money, and it's just this weird cycle that like they just toss the ball back and forth and everyone gets rich at the end of the day. It's so fucking weird to me. And like, I don't know, but I am much more interested, like I said, in reviews that are more, I don't want to say mature, but I mean, yeah, mature, more toned down and just more sincere. And like I don't want to like come across like, oh, I don't want people inserting their personality into their reviews or criticisms and stuff. Like, far from it. Like, I'm gonna link to this actually. Noah Gervais made this video talking about Planescape Torment, and there's this one point that just fucking got to me, where he's talking about like the themes of the game, about like, you know, long lost memories and remembering horrific things from like the past and stuff like that. And he relates it to the time that he was listening to this audiobook about a father and a son, and he was driving and just listening to this audiobook story or whatever, and he had to like stop the car because he just like remembered this like time in his life that he just completely had like compartmentalized away, and it like got to him. And like it got to me because like you could see like how that experience affected how he viewed Planescape Torment as an art piece or whatever. And like stuff like that is what I want more of, and I want less people shrieking about like the fact that a PC game doesn't run at 60 FPS. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. Just I'm frustrated with a lot of what like big YouTube reviews are, and kind of what we reward people for doing, when I think there's a lot better people out there doing way more interesting and like harder work and just not getting the same amount of attention or appreciation. I don't know. It's really frustrating. But yeah, I don't even know what I'm going on about anymore. I just felt the need to ramble, and frankly, I don't know. I've made it known that I don't really like a lot of big YouTubers or what they do. I wish more people would just kind of be themselves on here and not turn themselves into weird cartoon characters, because I think it makes the rest of us look really bad and it's kind of embarrassing. So, I don't know, but whatever. If you like that sort of thing, whatever, you do you. I'm not judging you. Like I said, don't want anyone being all mad about, you know, what I said here or whatever, but if you are, then guess you are. So, but yeah, I don't know. It's just been interesting to think about like Channel Awesome stuff and like the whole history of that as a thing, and how honestly it was kind of a relic of a time before you could just do this thing kind of like I do and make money off of it just kind of by just kind of doing it. Like, you had to previously become part of basically a business to do this sort of thing, or like part of like a larger group. You couldn't just do it on your own. And hell, like I'm not even doing this for a living or anything. I'm just doing this as a side gig. But I mean, like, at least I'm getting money off of it. Back in the day, you would be screwed if you even wanted to do this like way more seriously than I'm doing it. So that's been interesting to think about. And also too, just how like Doug Walker has been part of that initial, you know, he was part of that initial batch of video producers and just the influence and how much he informed what came later on and what we have nowadays in terms of like internet reviewer critique and like technique and style and stuff like that. Basically what I'm saying is that Doug Walker is the source of all of my problems in life. Everything that I've ever personally disliked probably stems back to that man. That's the main takeaway of this video. But I don't know. And also, hey, like I'm curious to see, like, you know, a decade from now, what is going to be like, because I feel like a decade from now, because this sort of thing always comes in waves or in generations. I'm going to be fascinated to see a decade from now what all of like the video producers and stuff that are big names nowadays end up becoming, or like all of the weird fucked up horror stories that come out about them and their business practices and like inappropriate behavior and stuff like that, because I am sure that there are thousands of stories that people have about a lot of big name YouTubers and stuff about how they're actually shitty people behind the scenes. But just a matter of that slowly coming out over time, I have to imagine. So, yeah, we'll see when that happens. Anyways, have a good one. Hope this wasn't too much of a downer, but just felt like reflecting on the state of internet critique, I guess. I don't know. Bye.